So this is part one of the KhoodeelaarTV television channel, BabyAngelGeronimo editions. This one is timed at 14:50 GMT on Saturday the 8th of October 2022. And we're running the piece in the knowledge of the action that Lies Truss has taken against a minister called Conor Burns. Now, Conor Burns is the first minister to be given the sack within weeks of Truss being in the post that Boris Johnson held. According to The Sun, which is running the piece about Conor Burns on page 17, the behavior of the Boris Johnson LECH, Chris Pincher, who pinched other man as Conor Burns pinched other man as well. The behavior of Chris Pincher led to Boris Johnson's downfall. That is what The Sun is saying, despite the fact that there have been many serial complaints against Boris Johnson. But it seems that Lies Truss has lost no time and has not prevaricated about Conor Burns. She just swiftly sacked him, withdrew the Conservative whip from him, and he is forced now to sit as an independent where investigations take place about him. It is not likely to be the last such event. Why are the Conservative MPs, so many of them proportionately, are caught in sexually pinching and groping other men? Amazing. Amazing, absolutely amazing. But the main splash on the front page of the Sun today, which you call scum, but new viewers, the viewers who are not particularly informed about the British press and the media and the role of the Murdoch, dirty digger Murdoch, may not immediately recognize that the scum is actually the Sun. So on the front page of the scum, there is GMC investigating television medic. Medic meaning doctor is an American kind of thing. And its splash reads, Holly and Phil, that is the GM, this morning presenters, Holly Willoughby and Philip Schofield. So it says, Holly and Phil Doc in sex probe. So it's a Conor Burns, the MP, and this doctor who is supposed to be a highly kind of successful in terms of the earnings, cosmetic surgeon, London born of African origin, and his name is given, two types of name is given. One is given as Dr. Fijian Esho, and the other name is given by the same General Medical Council in their comment in response to the SCUM inquiring about him. Their records show his name as Oluwafemi. Sounds like a Nigerian name, but I could be wrong, but it's an African name, definitely. Dr. Oluwafemi Esho has restrictions on his practice while we, the GMC, investigate the allegations against him. Now, the GMC referred Dr. Esho to an interim orders tribunal at the Medical Practitioners Tribunal Service in August 2022. And the Interim Orders Tribunal imposed a number of interim conditions on his practice. These include that, except in life threatening emergencies, Dr. Esho must not carry out consultations with female patients without a chaperone present, and except in life threatening emergencies, he must not make contact with patients outside a clinical setting, either virtually or face to face. And then they go on about his starring roles along with Phil and whatever, and how he featured as helping the daughter of Richard Medley, Chloe Medley, after she moaned of a puffy lip from a lip filler, and other alleged starring roles. Now, I don't want to comment on this ongoing investigation, except to say that the Sun should not be using words like star about individuals like this Esho, who it is reporting in the same piece as being under investigation based on multiple complaints against them about inappropriate behavior with women patients. What kind of word is star supposed to mean? It elevates them. It elevates them beyond reasonable ground for the use of the word star. In any case, a doctor is not a star. Doctors should not be treated as a star. And we should be talking more about that in context in relevant times in the future. Today's news from Pakistan is that Imran Khan has given a press statement about the order by a court in Pakistan for the arrest of one of the named targets in Imran Khan's rally speeches about the bribery and corruption. The details are, of course, going to be released and reported later in due course, but Imran Khan has welcomed that. And that actually shows that the Pakistan court system, the bureaucracy, is very gradually, but is accepting some of the very serious allegations that Imran Khan has been making since he was ousted by the imported hukumat on the orders of a cabal that was encouraged by the American CIA to depose Imran Khan's government. Because Imran Khan, the American CIA said, was anti-American. Now the fact is that Imran Khan is not anti-American. Imran Khan has never been anti-American. Imran Khan has been anti-interference by American state. Most of the people who have been sending funding in response to Imran Khan's 5 or 6 telethons, most of those people, Pakistani origin, are working and doing business, legitimate business, are working in various professions and capacities in the USA. And Imran Khan cannot be against American. Imran Khan has been very widely regarded by Pakistanis living in America. The same is true about the Pakistanis living in Canada. I mean, the amounts of money that they have been donating to in response to Imran Khan's appeal for the helping the flood victims, the amounts of money are staggering. In their millions of Pakistani rupees, and millions, I think they're reaching a millions of dollars equivalent. Now, those amounts absolutely disprove the claim made by Nawaz Sharif and retailed initially by the Financial Times India correspondent. I mean, can you imagine? Financial Times India correspondent moron was used as a spreader of rumor about foreign funding behind Imran Khan's political campaigns. And this idiot based in Delhi, well, he was filing from Delhi, but he is normally based in Bangalore in South India. And he has no knowledge and he has no kind of ground, evidential ground to write any of the things that he did write under his byline against Imran Khan, allegedly using foreign funding. In any case, foreign funding is not by itself proven. The donations that Imran Khan has been receiving have been made widely openly by people naming themselves, giving their addresses, giving their details online on live television. And unless there is proof, evidence of illegitimate, illegal behavior, illegal sourcing, no funding donations coming from any country can be called foreign funding in an illegitimate way. The news conference that Nawaz Sharif, is the younger brother, who is the Prime Minister of Pakistan now, Shahbaz Sharif, gave yesterday was very, very curious. Yesterday, meaning Friday the 7th of October 2022. The news conference, he addressed the news conference in a kind of monolingual, monosyllabic way, monolingual and monosyllabic. He hardly gave any elaborate details. He didn't name any names. He didn't give any examples that constituted admissible evidence, let's say in the legal term, that could justifiably be admitted as showing that Imran Khan was a liar, which is what he said Imran Khan was. He said Imran Khan is a liar. Then he said that if Imran Khan was allowed to remain in power in Pakistan as the Prime Minister or as the head of the government, then Imran Khan would have damaged Pakistan very seriously indeed. Now, he didn't say how Imran Khan would have damaged Pakistan in any way. And so that is how he went. I think it went for less than an hour. And there was to his right sitting a woman called Maryam Aurangzeb. I think she is a part of his government. He mentioned his niece, Nawaz Sharif's daughter, Maryam Nawaz, but who was not seen during the press conference. And many of the journalists or people appearing to be journalists present at the event spoke, but none of them had any notebooks or any kind of device with them as they spoke about the various issues that they wanted to have Shahbaz Sharif answer. And at the end of this ritual, he just said, "That's it, thank you very much," and words to that effect, and the event was finished. Now, that is a contrast, significant contrast, with the rallies and the gatherings that Imran Khan has been addressing, and the style and the content and the frame of references that Imran Khan has been kind of containing in his speeches over the last 4 or 5 months. Although he was called a liar, I don't think it stuck. I don't think that the majority of the people in Pakistan, either watching what Shahbaz Sharif said or hearing about this allegation, I don't think they would have believed him. Not because they didn't want to believe him, but because there was no evidence that this Sharif gave in his allegations. So we are going to wait for Imran Khan to follow up that kind of spiel. In addition to the press conference he gave earlier today, Saturday, the 8th of October 2022, it is expected, I expect Imran Khan to speak extensively after considering all the elements and components of the Sharif allegations or assertions against him. And we shall be following up in due course accordingly, of course. Now, back to the United Kingdom, as he said, Lies Truss has taken swift action against this minister, so-called Conor Burns. I mean, the swiftness of the action shows more about the anxiety that Lies Truss is feeling, going through, than about the substance of the allegations against this man. And this allegation is about the behavior of this man, Conor Burns, during the just ended Conservative Party annual conference, or Jamboree, in Birmingham 2-3 days ago. And it is clear that on the international front, in the context of the Vladimir Putin war on Ukraine, the war is more intense now, as Putin's supply of gas to the West, energy supply, is causing serious problems to many countries in the West. And Liz Truss, during her kind of pronunciations against Rishi Sunak's suitability as potential leader, made more speeches against Vladimir Putin than she made against any other foreign kind of element or source or leader or whatever. So that is causing the European Union, that the UK left, the European Union, to work hard to find a way to rally against this shortage of energy being caused and forced by Vladimir Putin. According to today's Financial Times, that is Saturday's Financial Times, 8th of October 2022, the alliance of the European Union countries against the Vladimir Putin action is itself being undermined by the alleged kind of rift between the German policy and the rest of the European Union membership. The German policy has been identified as giving in to some aspects of the pressure that Putin is putting. And both the Swedes and the Finns have been expressing concern about the immediacy of losing energy supplies. And all of that is being interpreted under the heading that the United Kingdom is not voluntarily going back, but is forced by these events to work at least cooperatively with parts of the European Union, which must be the beginning of the end of the lies that the Brexiteers promoted, because Brexiteers always said that Brexit would guarantee, absolute 100% guarantee, economic independence and economic kind of prosperity for a post-Brexit United Kingdom. And here is evidence that the opposite is happening. As for the policy about Northern Ireland in the context of the Brexit restrictions and relationship with the Irish Republic, again there is evidence that there will be changes to the policy that the UK imposed, and boastfully so. So it is very difficult to see how Liz Truss can be said to be succeeding at any point with anything. And the Bank of England said, according to the Financial Times, that if it hadn't bailed out with the $65 billion rescue package, then the UK economy would have collapsed by now. I mean, you cannot have more dire kind of evidence of desperation and desperate kind of consequences of the policies that Liz Truss thoroughly boasts about, and the policies that were imposed by the congenital liar Boris Johnson. How are they going to guarantee that most of the people in low income are going to get proper supply? And there are various measures in place and all the already being talked about having 3-day week and the limited supply of energy and people being asked to switch off use of energy. I mean, this is a situation that could not have been foreseen, could not have been foreseen in such graphic kind of detail even 2 months ago, even a month ago. But those people who wanted to maintain the UK's membership of the European Union did not elaborate on those in those graphic details, but they warned correctly that the European Union was a shelter from the declining UK economy. That is what they warned about, and that is what is being vindicated right now, this weekend, and it will be more extensively vindicated in the days, weeks, and months to come. Going back to the desperation felt by this mental slave, Suella Fernandez. Suella Fernandez, who has become braverman by marrying a white man. Suella Fernandez is from Goa. And her position as a Goa origin Indian member of the cabinet in the UK government is really perplexing. She's saying that the deal that the UK is making or about to make this week with Narendra Modi visit and allowing the Indians additional hundreds of thousands of So this is 23 minutes 19 seconds, and it seems to be still alive this program. So the Financial Times, according to the Financial Times today, that is weekend FT or FT weekend, is full of stuff, items that are very stark. The stark including this one about Lies Truss. She is being mocked and ridiculed by the Financial Times in the heading because she's railing against anti-growth forces. Now, let's say this. There is no such thing as growth when there is increasing mammoth volume of debt. You cannot have debt described as growth, which is what Lies Truss wants. If there is tax cuts, there will be less taxes and there will be more kind of debt needed to make up for the lost taxes. Simple as that. Now, there is a lunch with the FT. Now, this is a lunch with the FT. Is it today's lunch with the FT with Michael Gove? And he is being shown as having ideas about where Lies Truss has gone wrong and about his greatest regrets. What is Gove saying? Let's see what Gove is saying in this piece. Michael Gove strolls into the Half Moon pub in the heart of his affluent Surrey constituency. Nearly every customer looks up to goggle at their local celebrity. In his customarily effusive manner, the veteran former Conservative minister and Parma party plotter greets them all individually. And they go on. He's notably smarter than the rest of the clientele in his blue politician suit, union flag, and all the rest of it. So we shall talk more about this a bit later, about this particular lunch that they are having with him, or they had with him. Why did the UK's mini budgets trigger such a negative reaction when most of the measures had been announced during this summer's Tory leadership contest? Having already baked in tax changes for which there was an understanding, it had an element of risk which was skewed towards the wealthier. Now, there was a doubling down both on risk and on the opposite of redistribution. He acknowledges that daring audacity is required in politics, but this economic moment is really not a time for gambling. There is no recklessness in Gove's lunch order. We opt for the pub favorites of oxtail broth to begin, but diverge on the main courses. Gove goes for the seared carbs liver with trickle bacon. I picked the house beef burger with smoked cheddar and extra crispy fries, and so on. Where is it ending? Gove is affable and polite, but his radical policy zeal has made him a divisive figure. He honed a reputation as one of the Tory party's more effective politicians thanks to his role in the modernisation project that began under Cameron's leadership in 2005, the year he first entered Parliament after a successful career as a columnist and editor on The Times. He is scathing about where conservatism has gone in the past few months. There is a strain of free market economics, liberal, libertarian thinking that supports what's going on with Truss. You have columnists and commentators who support it, invoking Hayek and Friedman. But Hayek famously wrote an essay, Why I Am Not a Conservative. The conservative tradition is not to be a pure economic utilitarian, he continues, casting back to the 19th century debate between Manchester Liberals and the Tory governments of Benjamin Disraeli and Lord Salisbury. You obviously don't try to defy economic gravity, but you recognize that there is a role for government and for values other than those of the market, and that is proper conservatism. Indeed, Gove feels compelled to defend all of the party's recent leaders and chancellors from the attacks by libertarian Tories. It's not as though we weren't thinking about growth for the last 12 years. This is the key point Liz Truss is making. They shouldn't attempt to edit the past to suggest that David Cameron and George Osborne, Theresa May and Philip Hammond, Boris and Rishi Sunak were somehow members of the Marxist cell. As the oxtail soup arrives, the meat is succulent, swimming in tomato with a side of soft sourdough. We flip back to his earlier career. During his time in opposition, he was first voted into parliament when Tony Blair won his third election. And later, as Education Secretary, he was part of a movement under which the Tory leadership embraced same sex marriage and took steps to select more diverse MPs. But for Gove, modernization was about much more than social issues. One of the things that David did was to say we had to move away from unfunded tax cut promises, not having an approach towards the public service that was about helping people to opt out from state support and move away from the idea that the answer in education was grammar schools and more selection. In some form or another, every one of those has been junked by Truss. He sighs when I point this out. Gove's time as Education Secretary was his most radical and most controversial. He sought to raise attainment with the academies and free schools program, removing them from what he saw as statist local authority control, ripping up the curriculum to focus on more traditional subjects and battling with the teaching unions. A scheme to rebuild and revamp schools across the country backfired. I announced something too quickly because I was anxious to show that change was coming. I was impatient with the way that things had operated beforehand. It was done in both an insensitive and hurried way. The lesson, according to Gove, is to honestly acknowledge fault relatively early on and gain permission to reset. Education reform seemed set to be Gove's legacy until Brexit. During the 2016 referendum, he teamed up with the former aide Dominic Cummings to argue case for leave. Gove admits his infamous quip that the country had had enough of experts will probably be on his tombstone. He insists he did not want the referendum, finding himself opposing his old political friend Cameron, who as Prime Minister made the case for Remain. With the UK continuing to struggle with the economic impact of leaving the single market and customs union, and an unclear vision of how the country might take advantage of its status outside. Outside the bloc, does he harbor regrets? I ask myself all the time, was it the right thing to do? He says. I still think that it was the right thing, but that does not mean that a choice as momentous as that is Brexit, doesn't require you from time to time to think what are the downsides? Has it turned out in the way that you might have imagined? What lessons can you learn from it? Now, I can tell him that we knew that and we always told them, all of them, that they were lying. And what he's saying now, he's obviously totally admitting, completely admitting that Brexit was wrong. Our main course, this is the Financial Times man writing, or writer writing. Our main course arrived. Gob tucks into his calf's liver, deep in gravy, while I topple half of my burger, cooked to medium rare. Perfection. The case for Brexit not yet made. Gove continues, I think that Dom Cummings has made it clear firstly. If you think it was a mistake, you have to imagine what it would be like if we were still in the EU and what that would mean, not just today, Friday, but in the future. You've also got to look at things both in terms of the path not taken, but also in terms of the lessons you learned as a result of those decisions having been taken. Now, what benefits can he ascribe to the decision? He cites the speed and nature of UK's vaccine rollout. While technically the UK could have overseen its own vaccination program as a full member of the EU, that would never have been likely. For him, this is what matters. That is an absolute another lie. Brexit is a good thing in itself, in that it is the reassertion of democratic control. It is absolute rubbish over politicians and the stripping away of the capacity for politicians to make excuses for their own failures. But it all depends on how it is used and the policy consequences that come from it. Like Cummings, Gove is hopeful that Brexit Britain can respond to emerging technologies and threat, threats more adeptly. No, emerging technologies and threats more adeptly and rapidly. It's not so much about ripping up existing rules, though there are obviously some that can be amended and or ditched. It's more about how we look at everything from the future of life sciences to the future of artificial intelligence to the future of financial services. Are we going to regulate in a particular way that is more pro science or pro enterprise? Brexit may be the only area where Gove has kind words for the new Prime Minister. She's right that there are opportunities that we could have taken that we haven't. And she's right to be impatient with the inertia within some government departments and some regulators. But as ever, the judgment is you can't be impatient with everybody all the time. You've got to prioritize. With the lunch plates and glasses cleared away, Gove has a little time left for coffee. A double espresso for him, a white Americano for me. We shift into reflective territory. What did Gove regret the most from his 12 years as a minister? Not spending enough time with my family, he replies. He got divorced from his wife of 20 years, newspaper columnist Sarah Bine, in January this year, after she stated that his only mistress was politics. What about his biggest mistake in office? He looks around the pub, making awkward noises while seeking to alight on the right answer. Eventually, he concludes it was his early decision to cancel the school's refurbishment program. He also wished he had more time at the Ministry of Justice. Theresa May sacked him as Justice Secretary after the Brexit referendum. The answer does not feel wholly convincing. Pope's most painful legacy, however, is with Boris Johnson. The pair met at Oxford, where he ran the future Prime Minister's campaign to be president of the University Union Debating Society. They rose as Tory leaning journalists in the 1990s before turning to politics. Both backed Brexit in the 2016 referendum. But the relationship came asunder when Gove publicly announced that Johnson was not up to the job of being Prime Minister, sinking his leadership campaign. With hindsight, does he regret turning on him? I think I probably shouldn't have, he says. What I said reflected particular circumstances at a particular time. I like Boris, I admire Boris, and things ended badly and unhappily, but I wish it worked out in a different way. There were all sorts of lessons for me to learn from what happened in 2016. When Johnson became Prime Minister 3 years ago, he kept Gove in his government, first as his chief fixer in the cabinet office, then as his levelling up secretary to oversee efforts to tackle regional inequality following the 2019 election. The pair were united in seeing the Brexit referendum and ensuing election as evidence that the country wanted a different sort of conservatism, chiefly focused on addressing inequality of opportunity. Now, that is a pack of lies. That is a contradiction completely beyond condemnation. According to Gove, the Brexit vote revealed that his party had become a little bit too southern, a little bit too professional, more Waitrose than little, as it were, he says, in reference to two of Britain's leading supermarkets. That may be the next part of the modernization or relevance or conservative adaptation, was to become a party which had a much broader basis across class and geography. Gove oversaw the release of a policy document that sought to deliver on the levelling up vision, but the collapse of the Johnson government meant it never came to fruition. The Johnson Gove working relationship finally came to an end after Gove visited Downing Street the day before the Prime Minister quit to tell him to go. Johnson saw it as another betrayal and abruptly fired Gove as one of his final acts in number 10. I'm sad about the way that it all ended, Gove sighs. But I think you've got to accept with as much good grace as you can muster that if you have been a minister for as long as I have been, I have that. When it ends, it ends. For a second, his confidence seems to waver, as you can tell. It is still painful to dwell on it because it was a very difficult time. With the pub finally empty, Gove scoops up his battered briefcase to resume his constituency work. With little prospect of returning to ministerial duties, he will probably go back to writing newspaper columns. He will finish a long delayed biography of Viscount Bolingbroke, a leader of the Tories, under Queen Anne, and is eyeing up a return to radio broadcasting, something he has not done since his early years as a journalist. Gove will not be leaving Parliament either. So if the call came from Truss or a successor, would he return to the limelight? I don't think you can say never. Now, this is a piece by Sebastian Payne, and he is described as the FT's Whitehall editor. Now, Sebastian Payne is a moron. Now, although the name Payne is not a moron name, because it is the name of the only British political activist that I have any time for. Sadly, he lived 200 years ago, and he contributed to the two momentous revolutions in the West. One in America, unshackling the USA from the British imperialists, and the French Revolution. Both of those were significantly contributed to by Robert Payne. Now, this Sebastian Payne may or may not be related to the Payne, but this one is a moron because his entire career is a moronic one. And this piece does appear readable, but this is not a truthful piece about Michael Gove, nor about Brexit, nor about Truss, nor about Britain. And this is the sickness. This is the sickness that actually afflicts Fleet Street. Sebastian Payne was working at the Spectator in 2014, just before the so-called election for the corrupt post of elected mayor. When he was among the white personnel in the Stepney Way, near the Stepney Green School and the vicinity of the other secondary school where Lutfur Rahman had assembled almost all Bangladeshi men, most of them, if not every single one of them, aged over 40. And neither Payne nor Ted Jory, who allegedly reported on that, observed that at all. They didn't make that point. They might have made a point about no women being present there, which would have been factually correct. But the fact that there were these men assembled, corruptly assembled by Lutfur Rahman, was the most important event because these people didn't represent the actual views of ordinary voters in Tower Hamlets. These are people that would have attended a kind of dawat, khaybar dawat. They would have gone there to eat a meal. Many of these people are seen in the pictures that both Sebastian Payne and Ted Jory took. And any active thinking person in Tower Hamlets, if they are shown these pictures, would laugh at the gathering. Because none of these people has track record of holding consistent, honest opinion about society, about the community, about anything. And these are the people that might have been included in the kind of spiritually influenced voters that Maulana Shamsul Haq, not Shamsul Haq, his name is spelled in the proceedings, records of the proceedings, Shamsul Haq of the Ford Square Mosque. Shamsul Haq was exposed before Richard Morey as a liar because Shamsul Haq was initially quizzed about whether he had advised people by abusing his position as a mullah or as a alim or as an imam, whatever the particular platform he was kind of addressing the people from at the time. Shamsul Haq was asked if he had actually advised people to vote for Lutfur Rahman because that was the voters' spiritual duty to vote for him. And Shamsul Haq denied that he did that. A little while later, during the same day's hearing, or the same part of the hearing, because I wasn't there, so it could have been spread over 2 days or more than 2 days. Later, a sequence of the same interrogation or cross examination produces the evidence that Shamsul Haq was told by the side of the kind of petitioners that Shamsul Haq had actually made that advice on video or on record, audio record or video record, which was presumably played to Richard Morey. When it was played to Richard Morey and Richard Morey was convinced that Shamsul Haq had lied, the same question was put to Shamsul Haq. Did you really not advise people to vote for Lutfur Rahman? And Shamsul Haq said no. So he was asked, what about this evidence then that you actually did so? It is on the record. And Shamsul Haq's reply was that if it is on the record that I did so, then I must have done so. Now, this was the second staggering confession by a liar wearing clothes of a mullah or an imam or a Muslim leader. This was one, and the other one was the liar, member of the House of Peers, Pola Monzila Uddin, the liar. Pola Monzila Uddin appeared to present a package of certificates or certifying words about the character of Lutfur Rahman, saying that he was a person of integrity, honesty, and high dedication to social and public service, or words to that effect, or those effects. Now, obviously, the petitioners knew, everyone involved knew that Polauddin had been unmasked as a thief. Asked, did you steal money from the House of Lords on the allowance, falsification, etc., etc.? And Polauddin could not deny that. And as Polauddin could not deny that, she resembled Shamsul Haq, who could not deny the evidence against him. So those two, in my view, generally speaking from outside, because I wasn't present in the actual court, I only rely on what I read of the transcripts. And then I read the ruling that Richard Morey made, dated the 23rd of April 2015. Now, both Shamsul Haq and Pola Uddin, they are known names because of their roles. Now, these are the types of people. These are the types of people, not necessarily these two individuals, but these are the types of people that would have been present. Stepney, when Sebastian Payne and Ted Jory observed the gathering not long before the election day. And they gathered there to praise Lutfuroman, not to bury him. And anyone who knew the community, anyone who knew the community then or knows the community now, if they look at that picture, of the gathering or the gathered faces, and if they had any sense, would be laughing because of the totally astonishing audacity on the part of Lutfuroman to gather those people as ordinary people. They are the Shinni Khavra Manush or Shinni Khavra Guru. They would go to any kind of feast organized in the community. These are the regular faces of the Shinni Khavras. And it was corrupt then, it has been corrupt since. And Sebastian Payne had no idea who they were and what they represented. If he had, he would have destroyed these people, each one of them, in his subsequent report as published in the Spectator. The online version still contains the spelling mistake that he made at the time in 2014. And that is how thoroughly corrupt the Lutfuroman re-election has been. And the fact that it has been such a thoroughly corrupt re-election on 5th of May 2022 shows that the Labour Party is indeed politically dead in Tower Hamlets. It is corrupt, it is dead, and it is absolutely useless. And that is what the Lutfuroman escapade, if you like, represents. The Labour Party is dead. Lutfuroman's political party, so-called Aspire, is totally corrupt, and the Lib Dems don't exist, and the Greens don't exist, and the Communists, so-called, can you imagine there is a name called Communist Party? They are so corrupt that even they are more corrupt than even Lutfuroman's corrupt party. Because these crooks in the Communist Party shamelessly back the Lutfuroman brigade, both before and they have been doing it now. And there are a number of so-called socialists. They are the ones that have been apparently in internal kind of dispute in the Tower Hamlets Labour Party. And they have been supporting Lutfuroman, and they have been opposing the main kind of side of the Labour Party in Tower Hamlets. These are shameless, corrupt criminals. They have no idea about the Bangladeshi community, and they most certainly don't have any idea that Lutfuroman has been using them as white faces, token white faces, because they are so small in numbers. As the recently deceased Mark Baines pointed out, there were no women candidates in winnable seats. There were no winnable seats that the Aspire party kind of contested during the council side of the elections on the 5th of May 2022. Those winnable seats were not the winnable seats where Lutfuroman gave the male candidates the nomination. They were not given to any woman. That is fact. He only gave women the seats that they would not be able to win because all those seats were guaranteed to be Labour Party kind of seats. So this is the point that the opponents have made against Luther Roman. But they need not bother. Luther Roman is not running a political party aspire. There was open bribery. These nominations were purchased by minimum amount of money being paid to Luther Roman by these candidates. It's open robbery. So if in Pakistan, Imran Khan condemns the election commission in Pakistan as corrupt and an extension of the Sharif family, then the election commission or electoral commission in the UK is even as corrupt, if not more corrupt, than the counterparts in Pakistan. They should have known that this is a bogus political party and there should not be this purchase of nomination, open brazen bribery and corruption and criminality. So the Term Council, which is supposed to be elected council, the majority of the elected, so-called elected council being allegedly represented by the Aspire so-called party, is a corrupt council, openly purchased, bribed party. How is it that nobody is investigating this? And by nobody, I of course include in this question the targets of my question. Andy Arlam. Andy Arlam is a lying racist moron. Andy Arlam doesn't belong politically, that is, in campaign terms. He doesn't belong to Tower Hamlets at all. He never did belong. He never was heard of. And then, of course, Peter Golds. Go for Golds, he says. Peter Golds is a self-confessed anti-Bangladeshi racist liar who is, curiously, the source of advice for a very close ally of Abbasuddin alias Halal. Peter Golds, the liar, said up to March 2010 that he was opposed to the, well, including March, I think, 2010. He said he was against an elected mayor system in Tower Hamlets. And he even said the same thing at the Brady Center, where Abbasuddin alias Halal totally corruptly and stupidly fucked up the campaign meeting. He had 1, 2, 3, 4 people in turn chaired the same meeting during an hour or so. That was a complete abuse because Abbas alias Halal corruptly wanted that event to be dedicated away from discussing the campaign, away from contributing to the campaign against the elected mayor system. And he wanted to use that opportunity of chairing for 10 minutes an event. He gave that opportunity to 4 people. Why would he do that? Unless he wanted to appease them, unless he wanted to use that giving of the chair as a bribe to them. It was a farce. It was a farce beyond endurance. And Abbasuddin alias Halal was refusing to let me speak. I am the campaigner. Abbasuddin alias Halal is a liar. I am the campaigner. And Abbasuddin alias Halal was lying in order to stop the campaigner from speaking about the campaign that should have been underway strongly. So when he reluctantly agreed to give me the mic or the chair or whatever, or this or the table or the speech platform, he cut it short before I could get going. I wanted to discuss the various practical details of why having an elected mayor system in Tower Hamlets would be absolute disaster for the community, for the people needing the service of a council, and for accountability and so on. As it turned out later, of course, Abbasuddin Halal was lying through his teeth and everything else throughout, because he was in the Tower Hamlets Council labor group, which claimed that it was against the mayor system. If it was against the mayor system, then it didn't become clear in the campaign front, because most of the councillors, including Abbas, alias Halal, didn't tour the borough, arguing to people in the streets, at their doorsteps, against the mayor system, for democracy, for accountability. There was hush hush. There was hush hush, and Abbasuddin Elias Halal kept it hush hush all the while. So when the Private Eye magazine on the 16th of October 2010 ran the Rotten Boroughs column piece, Halal Dead Meat, I mean, it could not be more openly mocking and laughing at Abbasuddin Elias Halal. Halal dead meat. And Abbasuddin Elias Halal was dead meat. And why? Because he had earned the title of dead meat. And he was a dead meat from that moment on. Regardless of David Cohen's efforts to embarrass Lutfur Rahman by asking the question that Lutfur Rahman had failed to stop his Lutfur Rahman supporters from spreading the rumor that Abbasuddin Elias Halal had beaten up his former wife. Even if Lutfur Rahman had been, let's say, convicted in the eye of the public that he had done that, Abbasuddin Elias would not have been saved, because he had dug his own grave, literally, because he widely is believed 12 years on that he was the candidate A who benefited from people who had been dead for years, and their names were used to benefit Abbasuddin Elias Halal in the internal election at the so-called Spitalfields Housing Association. And the Department for Communities, etc., or its executive agency, or one of the agencies that investigated complaints about the dead voters, was the source of the information that Private Lie used, to the effect that Abbasuddin Elias Halal was asked not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times whether he, Abbasuddin Elias Halal, was candidate A. And the reference to candidate A was that this was the candidate to benefit whom electorally in the Spitalfields Housing Association internal election. Dead members of these Spitalfields Housing Associations were treated as alive and as voting. So fraudsters, impersonators were used to vote for the candidate A. And the total suggestion in Private Lie is that it is candidate A was Abbasuddin Elias Halal. So with that kind of dishonesty on display, on brazen display by Abbasuddin Elias Halal, by Maulana Shamsul Haq the Imam, by the Baroness Pola Monzila Uddin, What chance is there of any dignity in the image of the community in Tower Hamlets, in Bangladeshi community in particular, Muslims in particular? Contrast with them, compare with them, contrast and compare with them the campaigns that the Khoodeelaar campaign and the movement defending the community in the east end of London under my initiatives, the campaigns that we've been fighting for more than now 6 decades. Compare the campaigns. We have been morally campaigning, we have been ethically campaigning, and we have been honestly campaigning for bringing wider accountability and fairness to the many. And we have not been seeking to benefit ourselves. Most certainly, never going back to the graves of dead members of the community to dig them up, as Abbasuddin Ali has done. When Lutfur Rahman was exposed by Channel 4 television, not in the dispatches program that was broadcast on the 1st of March 2010, but this particular one was broadcast as a shorter program during the tenure of Lutfur Rahman after the election, October 2010 election, in which they showed footage of Lutfur Rahman using Tower Hamlets Council public money to transport his laundry by car from between two locations that are very near his home in the vicinity of the East London Mosque. And they ridiculed Lutfur Rahman. They said that he was wasting public money. And the implication and the point was that he was not entitled to do that. He was not originally from a rich, wealthy family, and it was not his money. That he was from a very financially very poor background, essentially, and he was now abusing public money that should have been used for the benefit of the ordinary people in the Tower Hamlets. Now, Lutfur Rahman did the same thing on the 15th of February 2011 when he hired a vehicle on meter while he attended a meeting at 164 Brick Lane, and part of which is contained representatively in the 1-minute footage that is online available that I filmed on that day, 15th of February 2011. Lutfur Rahman had this car keep the meter running while he was attending the meeting. The meeting must have taken place at least an hour, if not longer. And the meeting was not of any significance at all. The meeting was for Lutfur Rahman to do petty, pathetic politics by thanking a group of people who he had mobilized to vote for him as part of the agreement, de facto, not in writing, that if they voted for him, if they mobilized the women, and if the women voted for him, then he would make sure that this organization would get council funding. That is exactly what happened. So Lutfur Rahman lied, as did the rest of his crew, as did the individuals in posts in that organization. And nobody has come forward to ask questions about Lutfur Rahman's corrupt behavior. All the allegations that motivates Lutfur Rahman did not include this one or this type of corruption by Lutfur Rahman. All the allegations made by Eric Pickles, the local government secretary of state at the time, Eric Pickles is the one that actually made the devastating declarations, which George Git Galloway, Ken Livingstone Livingstone, and others condemned as being undemocratic. I shall come to that in a minute. All the corruption that Luther engaged in, the main corruption was not helping Bangladeshis as such, but there is a distinction between Bangladeshis who happen to be kind of bribed, in effect, to vote for Luther and then get the kickback, they get the actual reciprocal recognition by getting paid grants by Luther. Those people may be Bangladeshis, but they were not being paid grants because they were Bangladeshis. That is a very serious distinction between the truth of that and what John Biggs said in September 2013. So all the allegations against Luther about corruption that Peter Gold's claims have been floating, those allegations have not included the real allegations, the real truth of Luther corruption. And neither Andy Arlam nor Peter Golds nor anybody else connected with the petitioners, Azmal Hussain, none of them has raised these questions about this corruption, these corrupt deeds. And there are other crooks in the community who are ethnically Bangladeshis, but they're crooks. And they do not ever represent the interests of anybody other than themselves. They don't represent the Bangladeshis, never have done, never will do. These are the crooks that form the crew behind Luther. And Luther reciprocated their kind of behavior by helping them. One criminal, not one criminal, there are literally dozens of criminals in Tower Hamlets that Luther actually helped by abusing his position as in the post of that corrupt post of the mayor. And Luther did the other criminality, which was to have the likes of Kalam Chowdhury and Muhammad Jubair attend meetings that should have been attended by Tower Hamlets Council's full-time employees, monitoring actual decisions made by the council about serious council duties. So the Navara media crooks and liars have no idea about Tower Hamlets, no idea about what went on in Tower Hamlets Council through Luther criminality and corruption. Nor do the criminals out over the Atlantic in the USA. They have been peddling the lie attributed to Luther saying that he lost everything. The billions of pounds that Luther abused during the years he was incumbent didn't belong to him, could not belong to his father, could not belong to his entire kind of 14 generations of his ancestry. These funds belong to the people of Tower Hamlets, the public. And all the lies that Luther has been telling about serving the community are lies that Peter Golds does not want to raise, because if he does that, then Peter Gold's own government will be exposed as also equally corrupt and negligent and criminal. For example, I earlier said about Eric Pickles. Hello, who is that? So the series of lies that Luther Rahman told during the years he was in post until ousted by Richard Morey on the 23rd of April 2015, the lies were and remain too credible to be ignored, too credible to be kind of passed off or dismissed as not being comprehensible. So, why has Andy Arlam or Azman Hussain not pursued those lies? That is the question that remains and remains outstanding for Azman Hussain to answer. Did Azman Hussain understand that corruption is a serious matter? Did Azman Hussain himself collude with Lutfur Rahman and others in lying about the role of the council, role of the mayor post? And what did Azman Hussain do during the years from June 2015 when John Biggs became replacement elected mayor of Tower Hamlets and until the 5th of May? Did Ajmal Hussain take part in John Biggs's lying? Did Ajmal Hussain do anything to frustrate the petition in the Labour Party, by campaigners, to actually have the elected mayor post scrapped? This question must be answered by both Ajmal Hussain as well as by Abbas Uddin alias Helal. Because Abbas Uddin alias Helal never, never wanted the mayor system not to be there. For example, when the meeting took place in January 2010 at the Micro Business Center in Greater X Street, the meeting was, quote, conducted by Alauddin. Alauddin was not a councillor at the time, and it was the main table, if you like, the top table, was occupied by Alauddin and another former Labour councillor, Ghulam Murtuza. There was no currently councillor at the time in January 2010 who either attended the meeting or spoke at the meeting or argued against having the elected mayor system. So we shall be talking more about this in the next part. This is 1 hour 28 minutes 51 seconds, the part 1. We are finishing this part.